The deep woods aren't just quiet. Sometimes they're alive. I never expected one night in the forest to haunt me like it still does. I thought I was just going out for a simple solo camping trip. Fresh air, stars, a little escape from everything. But the night I stayed out there, something shifted in the shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me jump. It felt like the forest itself was watching me, waiting. And then I realized I wasn't completely alone. I still can't stop wondering. What was out there, just beyond my tent, hidden in the darkness, watching me? Tonight, we're diving into true deep woods horror stories that actually happened. So, stick close and keep watching till the end to find out what happened, before it was too late. But before we start, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss any new chilling releases. If you're enjoying the content, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's see how many of you truly love this kind of episodes. Now here's your challenge. One of the stories you're about to hear might not be real. It could be completely made up. Or maybe all of them are true. Watch till the end. Try to spot the fake, and leave your guess in the comments. And as for last episode's fake story, it was story number 2. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. I've always loved the woods. There's something about being swallowed by green silence, about stepping off pavement and into the rhythm of wind, leaves, and water. The forest has always been my cure, antidote for the concrete, the traffic, the hum of neon lights, and endless emails. A few years back, when the burnout had me by the throat, I decided to take a solo camping trip deep in the Pacific Northwest. No official campgrounds, no crowded trails, just me, a tent, and wilderness. I found a mention on an old hiking forum, half a sentence buried in a thread, that described a quiet clearing near a creek. Not an official site, not even a marked spot, but supposedly flat enough to pitch a tent and close enough to water for washing and cooking. It sounded perfect. I didn't tell many people, just a coworker and my brother. Something about it felt personal, like I was keeping a little secret from the noise of the world. The drive took almost 6 hours. Winding back roads, patches of gravel, stretches where the pines pressed so close, it felt like I was driving through a green tunnel. By the time I pulled off the dirt road and shouldered my pack, the sun was already leaning west. The hike in was harder than I'd expected. The air smelled of pine resin and damp earth, thick with the kind of cool wetness that clings to the lungs. A creek murmured somewhere ahead, muffled by trees. I followed that sound until the path spat me out into a small clearing. It was just as the forum post had promised. Flat ground, the creek running 10 yards away, tall trees circling like watchmen. A thin carpet of moss muffled my steps. No fire rings, no beer cans, no footprints. It felt untouched, private. By late afternoon, I had my tent pitched and my little fire crackling. Dinner was simple: instant noodles, a strip of jerky. I sat by the flames while the light drained from the sky. The forest shifted from green to black, and the stars spilled out like cold fire above me. For the first time in months, I felt my body unclench. No phone service, no engines, just water, wind, and the crackle of fire. It began so gradually I almost didn't notice. The nighttime forest is never truly silent. Even in the wildest places, there's always a background chorus: crickets, owls, the shiver of leaves. But sometime after the moon rose, the sounds began to thin. The creek still gurgled faintly, but the other voices, bugs, birds, even the whisper of branches, faded one by one until the night pressed in, heavy and absolute. I remember sitting forward on my log, frowning into the dark. It wasn't just quiet, it was wrong. The hairs on my arms prickled. I doused the fire and retreated to my tent, telling myself I was tired. The nylon walls felt suddenly flimsy. Still, I zipped myself in, rolled into my sleeping bag, and closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come easily. It was sometime after midnight when I woke to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was water, the creek playing tricks. But no, these were voices, low, urgent, more than one. My stomach turned to ice. I sat up, holding my breath. The whispers circled the tent. They weren't close enough to make out words, but they carried a rhythm, broken every few moments by something worse. A wet, muffled chuckle. The kind of laugh you hear in the dark and know isn't right. My flashlight was at my side, but instinct screamed against turning it on. I stayed frozen, every nerve begging me not to move. Minutes dragged like hours. Then, silence. That silence was worse than the whispers. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Pine needles crunching as they moved in a circle around me. Closer, closer still. They stopped directly beside my head. I could hear breath. And then, in a voice so close it seemed to touch the fabric of the tent, a rasp whispered, "Are you scared?" Every muscle in my body locked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might shake the ground beneath me. The voice lingered like frost in the air. Then the footsteps moved again, retreating. Each step fainter, until there was nothing. I stayed frozen until the first bruised streaks of dawn colored the sky. When I finally unzipped the tent, the clearing looked unchanged. The fire pit was cold ash. My pack leaned against a log, but then I saw them. Footprints. Dozens of them, circling the tent. Small, muddy, bare. Not children's prints exactly. Longer, narrower, the toes strangely pointed. They sank into the moss in odd ways, like whoever left them didn't walk quite right. My stomach dropped. I packed faster than I've ever packed in my life. No breakfast, no creek water. Just everything shoved into my pack and me half running back to the car. Every few steps I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see figures moving through the trees, but I didn't. The forest was silent as a grave. Back in the city, I told myself it had been my imagination, exhaustion, nerves, maybe hunters or kids messing around. But at night, lying in bed, I'd hear it again. That rasp. "Are you scared?" I didn't sleep well for weeks. Finally, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who grew up in Washington. When I described the location, his face went pale. "You camped near the creek?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He told me his grandfather used to warn them about a stretch of forest people called the Hollow Place. Said there were stories, about voices that came from nowhere, about figures that circled camps at night, about children who went missing. "They say it's the creek," my friend said. "Takes people, calls them out of their tents, leaves the prints." I laughed it off, but it didn't reach my chest. A week later, I finally unloaded my gear from the car. My tent was still damp with forest smell, the nylon smelling faintly of smoke and moss. As I shook it out on the driveway, something fluttered loose. A scrap of paper, wet and torn. It wasn't mine. Across the surface, in faint smeared graphite, someone had written a single sentence, "We'll come again." And underneath, pressed into the fabric in a ring of dirt, was the outline of a small, bare footprint. This happened when I was in middle school. It was summer, and my parents had signed me up for a month-long all-boys summer camp. The campsite was exactly what you're imagining. 6 or 7 small cabins spread out in the forest, with a small lake, fire pits, and even a sand volleyball court. Situated 4 hours away from town, the place was old, but still used for summer camps. When we arrived, I unpacked my stuff into one of the cabins, and some of the kids I'd be staying with wanted to explore the forest before dinner. The rules were laid back. We could go as far as we wanted, as long as we could still see the cabins. As we walked into the forest, one of the kids pointed out someone, a man who had to be over 50 years old, looking almost homeless with dirty clothes and a rough gray beard. We assumed he was one of the camp counselors. The guy gave us a weird smile, and I awkwardly waved back, thinking nothing of it. Later that night, We informed one of the camp counselors about the encounter. They took it seriously, heading out to that part of the woods themselves, but the man was gone by then. We started to realize that a large portion of the camp counselors were teenagers, and no one seemed to know who that man was. Over the next few days, we were too creeped out to explore much. On the fourth night, things took a dark turn. I woke up to the sound of the cabin door handle rattling. Most nights at 11 p.m., a counselor would knock on all the cabins to remind kids to lock their doors. Assuming it was the counselor, I yelled out a response, but a flashlight turned on from outside, pointing into the windows. Someone was trying to see inside. Other kids woke up, and I motioned for them to get down. The person circled the cabin, shining the light through every window. After what felt like an eternity, the light turned off, and everything returned to silence. It was 4 a.m., and it wasn't a counselor. We stayed awake until morning, and when a teenage counselor came to wake us up for breakfast, we told him everything. He took us to the adult counselors, and what we heard terrified us. Another kid from a different cabin had seen someone trying to pick a lock the previous night. The description matched the man we saw in the forest on the first day. A beard, dirty clothes. The entire camp got canceled due to safety concerns. A bus arrived that afternoon and took us all back home. Years later, I did my own research and found a small report. The police had been called in after we left. They combed the area and found a small tent nearby with essentials and hundreds of Polaroid pictures of the camp, including disturbing ones taken at night through cabin windows. The police waited for someone to return, but no one ever did. The man was never found. The incident left a lasting impact on me. It made me realize that danger can lurk even in seemingly safe environments. The experience taught me to stay vigilant and trust my instincts. It also highlighted the importance of reporting suspicious activities to authorities, as it could potentially prevent harm to others. To this day, I wonder what the man's intentions were and why he targeted our camp specifically. Did he have a history of similar activities? Was he a transient seeking shelter or something more sinister? These questions remain unanswered, adding to the unsettling nature of the encounter. The incident also made me appreciate the role of law enforcement and their dedication to ensuring public safety. Their thorough investigation and swift response demonstrated their commitment to protecting the community. While the man was never apprehended, I hope that the evidence collected by the police has helped shed light on his activities and potentially prevented further harm. Overall, this experience served as a stark reminder that even in the tranquility of nature, there can be hidden dangers. It urged me to be cautious and attentive in unfamiliar surroundings, and it emphasized the importance of creating safe environments for children and young people. A few eerie encounters have occurred in my life, and whether it's because I'm getting older or just an unfortunate magnet for strange happenings, one particular experience still sends chills down my spine. This event took place in the early 1990s when I was 8 years old. My family had taken a trip to visit my uncle, who lived deep in the woods of southern Illinois. Their home sat on a vast stretch of land, isolated from the rest of the world. The only other people who lived along that dirt road were close family members, making it a pretty quiet and secluded place. As a result, no one ever really locked their doors because, well, family was always dropping by for a visit or to borrow something. One evening, my parents, aunt and uncle, decided to drive into a nearby town for a night of bowling. At the time, my brothers, aged 11 and 12, my cousins, aged 6 and 14, and I'm a girl, stayed back at the house. The sun was just setting when the adults left, and the rain soon began to pour, quickly darkening the surroundings. To pass the time, we decided to play a game we invented, which was essentially hide and seek in the dark, but with a dramatic twist. We called it Vampire. We'd use an old thin mattress that was left in the living room. Whoever was it would lie on the mattress, which they'd fold over themselves like a coffin. They'd then count down to midnight, at which point they'd start hunting for the others. The house was pitch black at night, and in the middle of the woods, the darkness felt complete. It was so dark, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face, which made the game all the more intense. I was hiding near the mattress, about 6 feet away, as my 11-year-old brother Jake was it and was counting down. A flash of lightning lit up the house for a split second, and I don't know if I was already looking toward the window or if the sudden light made me turn. But through the living room window, I saw him. There was a man standing there, his face pressed against the window, hands cupping his face as if he were desperately trying to see inside. He looked exactly like the kind of creepy figure you'd expect from a bad horror movie. Overweight, unkempt, with a scraggly beard. My heart raced, and every hair on my body stood on end. I tried to dismiss what I saw, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But then Jake whispered in a firm, controlled voice, "If anyone is hiding in here, stay still." I croaked out, "I'm here." Just as another flash of lightning struck. When the light faded, the man was still out there, but he was no longer looking into the window. Instead, he was staring at the front door. My brother and I exchanged a look, both understanding exactly what was happening next. From where he stood, the man was only about 5 feet away from the door, and Jake was just as close, though there was a couch between him and the door. In a swift motion, Jake leaped over the couch and locked the front door just as the man began to tug on the handle. There was no time to think. Jake immediately flipped on the porch light and started turning on the interior lights to let the man know we were aware of his presence. I can't explain it, but I was paralyzed by fear. I was too scared to panic. I had full trust in Jake, relying entirely on him to know what to do next. He instructed me to lock all the other doors while he called for everyone to come out and secure the windows. The next few minutes felt like a blur in my memory, but I clearly remember locking the side door and then the sliding glass door in the back of the house. Some of us remembered seeing him outside the back door, but I don't think I ever saw him there. What I do remember vividly is locking the back door, then standing frozen, hearing Jake's calm but urgent voice telling me, "Close the curtain. Listen to me. Close the curtain." I quickly obeyed. I'm not entirely sure if I saw him at the back of the house, but I do remember Jake's voice and the sharp fear in it. As we tried to reach the police, my uncle's phone, a relic of rural living, was down and the line was dead. For those who aren't familiar, a party line was when multiple homes shared a single phone line. It was the kind of thing that could be a bit of a nuisance, but it also meant we couldn't make a call. We also attempted to use my uncle's CB radio, but it was no help either. My uncle, a hunter, had a rifle collection, but with my older cousin on a trip, those rifles were nowhere to be found. The only weapon we could find was a BB gun, which, though it looked like a real rifle, didn't offer much comfort. I recall Jake placing me on phone duty, and my older brother, Sam, on the radio, while Jake stood guard at the front door with the BB gun. After what felt like an eternity, Jake said, "He's back. He's coming up the driveway." We froze in terror as the sound of footsteps grew louder. Without hesitation, Jake swung open the door, stepped onto the porch, and aimed the BB gun. "Get away now," he shouted. To our surprise, we heard our cousin, Mike, who lived a few houses down, call out, "You do realize that's a BB gun, right?" Although Mike, just 15, seemed skeptical of our story, it was a relief to have him there. He stayed with us until our parents returned, and while I'm not sure we ever told them the full details, there was no police involvement. We simply carried on with our trip, though we never played vampire again without recalling that night. Years later, I talked to Jake about the events. He recalled everything accurately, though there was one thing that surprised me. The man had been at the back door too. Jake explained that while I was locking the side door, he had seen the creepy figure move around the house to the back. When I unlocked the sliding door, the man was right there, staring inside at me. It was in that moment that Jake had instructed me to close the curtains. Additionally, we'd both forgotten about seeing him in the front yard, but as it turns out, he had been tampering with one of the cars that my cousins had left in the yard. After failing to start it, he wandered into the nearby woods, and we never saw him again. If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most, and if you could survive only one of them, which one would it be? Don't forget to drop your guess. Which story do you think was the fake one? Also, if you enjoyed the episode, hit super thanks if you're on YouTube, or send us some stars if you're on Facebook to show some love and make your comments stand out. Want to go next level? Get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive members-only content, and much more by joining our YouTube membership or becoming a Patreon supporter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's waiting there for you. Don't forget to like, share, and catch up on our previous episodes. And now, stay tuned for the next horror episode.